Hello? Hello? Yeah.
You can see it here, but our next speaker is Danning Sweet from Flashbots, going over the often overlooked but incredibly relevant topics of mempool, order flow, and MEV. So welcome to Danning.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Danning Sui. I'm a data scientist at Flashbots. Quick intro about Flashbots. We're a MEV research organization. We also build solutions for MEV infrastructure. In the past, we launched MEV Boost, which is used by 96.3% of validators today on Ethereum. We also have a private RPC product called Flashbots Protect, where like retail users, like any of us, can send our transaction to a Flashbots RPC, and so your transaction is private to the public mempool. And on top of that, we also launched a Orderflow auction MEV share, where basically you can configure the hints or basically information you share when you share your transaction to Flashbots Protect RPC. And then a group of searchers will be able to search on top of your transaction for mostly only background and potentially refund you for the profits they're making on chain. So today, I'm a data scientist, so I'm doing a data analysis or share some insights from the charts and data we look at, like order flow and mempool and MEV-related topics. All right. It's moving on my laptop, but it's not moving there. Well, let's see. The click. Okay, cool. I'll use my, cool. So agenda today, okay, works now. Okay, cool. Agenda today will start with how our understanding about the evolution or, the order flow space look like from, back in the day, start with Uniswap, DEX trading, now today with Solver model, and then we look at some like microstructure we found out where like all of the applications are sending their private order flow towards private mempool. And then also the private order flow shared by different block builders. So first we start with order flow landscape. Here's a chart from Do Analytics, and this is basically the volume on DEX trading that we accounted that is non-toxic, meaning like we filtered out all the MEV bots volume. So mostly our recognized routers from the major protocols that used by user like us. And over time, how it evolved in the past 3 years. Started with DeFi summer in 2020. We know that like Uniswap is really taking off with adoption from most of retail. And so you see like DEX router, which is basically Uniswap, SushiSwap. Also, of course, back in the day, there are also like order book, like Ether Delta, IDEX, and early in the days, 0x model. And over time, when 1-inch aggregator and 0x also transition towards DEX aggregator direction, where basically they're starting to aggregate the fragmented liquidity across different AMM pools. You see the volume also take off with aggregator. And then slowly, we also seeing that like application like MetaMask swaps, which is like wallets now starting to really enabling the UI UX for user to really easily swap DEX or like non-custody wallet swaps. We see this little gray shape meta aggregators also taking off, where they really want to build a like a router or like a model that is like favoring user for mostly UI UX convenience. And then we see the pink, which is Solver models, started with CowSwap, and then now 1-inch Fusion and Uniswap X also is taking volume. And the little yellow there is interesting. It's called Telegram bots, and which is pretty much the most trendy application in the past year. And it's very controversial because they ask you to share your private key with them, and a lot of people are using them today. So one trend first caught our attention is that the Telegram bots seems to be the only novel new use case that's been taking off in the past year. This chart is slightly different, which is by transaction count percentage, and you can see Telegram bots is taking a huge chunk here, like around 30% and more. That's starting from like a year ago, and we know like market is pretty dead, but Telegram bots are pretty active. And then the second trend is that like with the all the DEX routing now is moving towards the solver model. What does that mean? So Started with CowSwap. They really want to improve the price execution quality on DEX trading, and like a lot of the study here also look like a lot of the user transaction that's accessing AML liquidity are being wrecked by MEV bots on the mempool, basically. And so they started to outsourcing their routing to a group of people who are called solvers or resolvers on 1inch Fusion or filler today on Uniswap X, basically to ask them to bid for what's your best price that you can provide for my user. And then the best bids will win, and then they will execute with the best bids. Basically, it started a auction market for the routing competition, and so to encourage better output. So optimal routing development in the past. And also, there's another trendy word right now called RFQ, request for quote integration. Started with most of the DEX aggregators, like 1inch and 0x. When they started DEX aggregator model, they introduced the private liquidity with market makers. So, for example, like jump trading or Wintermute are the biggest one in DeFi today. And usually how it works is by when the DEX aggregator getting a request from a user, they will ping both all the AMM liquidity pools and see what's the best price out there on AMM. And also they will ping their private market makers, say, what's your best price to offer for my user? And then they will compare across AMM and RFQ and say, oh, now RFQ price is better than the best available price across AMM. Then I'm going to settle my user's trade with the market maker. So that's how RFQ works. So if you think about this comparison with the best AMM price, it's really trying to introduce an even better price that's available across all the AMM. So potentially it's introducing a better optimal pricing as well. Because of their hedging trades or arbitrage trades on the centralized exchange from the market makers. And even though the volume is going down because most of the general DEX trading trend is going down, but you can see number of integration that's happening right now across our RFQ is going higher. And another trend we see in a microstructure is that like a lot of the RFQ is trying to disintermediate all the middlemen. Like say they used to work with 0x or 1inch to provide the quotes for the request volume coming in, but they now just go to MetaMask directly, say, hey, I can provide you quotes. You don't need to go to like a DEX aggregator. I can give you a better one. So to potentially cut any intermediate fee in between and potentially give a better, more competitive price. So yeah, when we actually look at the trading behavior across different use cases or applications that we mentioned earlier, it's interesting that they're showing a very different, preference from pretty much the user on their platforms. On the left side, it's trade sides, and you can see Telegram bots are mostly like really small trades. And combined with the trade pair chart on the right side, you can see like Telegram bots is pretty much only trading on long tail pairs. The peg means stablecoin to stablecoin or ETH pegged pairs. ETH and BTC means mostly, say for example, WETH towards a major token, or like basically WBTC towards a major token. So more like the price discovery pairs. When we look at the trade sides, wallet swaps are usually very small trades because most of the users there are like retail users. They're making smaller trades. The DEX front end are trending towards smaller trade, mostly dominated. This data set is mostly dominated by how dominant Uniswap front ends are today. And then the meta aggregator are leaning towards larger trades. This mostly because the advantage or why people would choose meta aggregator and aggregator is because user are making a bigger trade and they prefer a potentially more a better pricing or a better execution model or platform. And solver model is pretty much only executing on large trades, and you can know like the user trends is like more degen towards these models. Yeah. And okay, I have a chart crime because the next chart will have so many labels, and so just like warning, sorry. But I promise it's interesting. So if I put all those data we just saw into a scatter plot, and then it's this, so the y-axis is trade count, so basically frequency of the trade, and then x-axis is median trade size, so basically how large the trade are per transaction. And you can pretty much see all these different applications are falling into different quadrants into like a, two-dimensional chart. And I labeled them by color. So Telegram bots are like yellow here, DEX frontends are pink, and then meta aggregators are blue, and the solver model is green. Wallet swaps are gray here. And you can see like it's interesting that they're all falling into some similar area. So like it's like clustering themselves by, speaking by themselves, like by the trading preferences. And if I may conclude, it looks like, the use cases served by DeFi today looks like this. So on this quadrants, you can see like 3 of them are filled by all these kind of dApps or applications. Starting with Telegram bots, they're like the orange here or yellow here. It's like higher frequency bot trades, so more like bot-like, and it's like much higher frequency. The reason why it's smaller here, I believe, is because, first of all, they're more like catering towards a retail use case, where basically they allow you to so easily to basically tap some commands in Telegram, and then you're able to like do basically MEV bots kind of thing or searching kind of thing. And it's really great, as in it's like democratizing the searching process to very easier access. Although they have a like huge security issue, right? Like, and I think that's also one reason why it's falling into more because towards the smaller trader sites. From the people I know who are using Telegram bots, they're like, it's interesting use case, but they don't trust if they're able to, like keep their private key safe, or they're gonna maybe run away with your funds. So they are only just testing with the smaller funds. So makes sense they're falling into a smaller trade size as well. And the gray one, smaller retail trades are served by basically wallet swaps, and you can see it's like lower frequency and smaller trade. The blue one, which is DEX aggregators today, are mostly serving like slightly larger trade size, so medium whale trade, and the really big whale trade are using solver models on the right lower side. And the pink one is a little bit hard to fall into one bucket because Uniswap is like one use case, they're like crazy big, and so that really just says it's like one use case when you're like the first mover and you got the distribution power, you're just like standing out there. And then all the other DEX front ends are pretty inactive today, but they like fall into the whole range of the trade size. You can see the curve one is really big with trade size, and like they are optimal with the stable swap with bigger trades. So they are all trade size range depending on the AMN design optimization direction. But there's one area that's falling empty. So what is it if we think about it? And I think my answer looking at that is really basically either MEV bots who are making bigger and higher frequency trade, or you say, if me as a retail today, I want to make trade for like higher frequency and trading purpose for speculating the prices and making profits, I still have to go to like CeFi. So my conclusion for the chart is that DeFi today is really serving more of the 3 quadrants here and not yet serving that parts for the retail or real users. To acknowledge that a lot of the charts here is a collaboration with my teammate Angela, and she's writing a blog post that's coming soon. Cool. So one interesting thing when we were doing the project and look at the microstructure of all the order flow is that when we compare all these transactions, if they're in private mempool or public mempool, we noticed the interesting trend that like a lot of the applications have their orders sending towards private mempool and even like only private mempool. So again, very small label, and I will read them out so you don't have to. For example, we have this view called a Sankey view where we're showing users' transaction from left to right, how they enter the whole DEX trading, or like how they enter the order flow stack, and then they go to which router, and then they go to which solver that's solving or like basically routing for the trade, and then which mempool they're going towards, and potentially maybe order flow auction, and which builder they're sending towards. So this is a CowSwap's data, and you can see the entry point front ends are CowSwap website or their integrators go to CowSwap and all the solvers they're having, and almost all of them are going to private mempool. So the solvers are sending their transaction to settle through private mempools, And because MEV blocker is launched by CowSwap, which is a order flow auction that supposedly also potentially can background your transaction and give user refunds to improve the price, it seems like there's a vertical integration there that all the orders go into MEV blocker as well. 1inch separated by 1inch website default, meaning it will be directed towards 1inch fusion model, which is a solver model, with 1inch labs running a solver, resolver running a solver, the T, and CYs are Tick, Bastion. Yeah, all the resolvers on 1inch fusion, they're also sending to private mempool. This is Telegram bots, Unibot, and then they are sending to private mempool, and they're mostly forward towards Flashbots Protect RPC. This is Maestro Telegram bot. Most of them are going to private, and some are going to public for some reason, and they are multiplexing across two OFA, sending both towards Flashbots and MEV blocker. So yeah, concluding all those data, we categorize different applications as how we were doing earlier, and we see that solver models, including like Uniswap X, CowSwap, 1inch Fusion, are sending pretty much all their transactions towards private mempool. Telegram bots are sending over 87% to private mempool, and the normal trading platforms used mostly by retail, and they don't have the the transaction submission power. Instead, user-owned DEX front ends or meta aggregator, they're sending transaction themselves through MetaMask, has a much less private mempool percentage, but also have a pretty good adoption by volume percentage. So if we conclude everything here, is like half of the non-toxic DEX volume today are going through private mempool. It's pretty impressive in terms of the private mempool adoption. And the next question we want to ask about is like, how does the private order flow percentage affect block building today? If you're familiar with block building, after the merge, when PBS is introduced into POS day in Ethereum, a lot of the validators are now using MEV Boost. If on the right side, you can see like 93% in the last 7 days of validators are building blocks through MEV Boost, meaning the validator are no more building themselves, and they're just taking the highest bid from the block builders. And here is a view of what's top block builders today. Beaver Build and rsync are taking both 30%, who are also both high-frequency trading firm. They're basically, we call them like searcher builder, meaning when they're building their blocks, they potentially can also insert their own private flow where they are arbitraging across centralized exchange and DEX, which brings much more value for their order flow and makes them much easier to win for block bidding. The next one is Titan and Flashbots, and there are some other builders. So yeah, today when we look at number of transactions on Ethereum and compare how many of them are seen in public mempool, you can see like 15% of transactions are basically from private mempool today on Ethereum. So back to the block building context, what are the valuable factors, or what are the key for block building? And people say order flow is the king for block building, right? And a quick analysis here is that like we think more order flow will definitely introduce more value for your block building, and the more private the order flow are, will also preserve more value for you to keep and potentially have a higher profit margin for the block building. So another further layer is that like if even the private order flow is valuable and like other people don't see the private order flow, it's possible that like a lot of the flow from retail can be lower value in terms of like MEV leaking. Say basically, so if we think about here, really it's like a model of like what are the MEV value there are. So MEV value mostly are gas fee and potentially the transfer towards e-builders. And if you have just normal retail private order flow, what you're really getting are just like extra gas fee. And the more higher value order flow means the transactions are so valuable, and the searcher are basically giving out a rebate towards builder, or basically transfer to builder from their profits, and so to be included, and so they can potentially make a trade on centralized exchange, etc. So a tweet recently showed that like there's a website built by this person Winnie, and she was looking to basically the arbitrage bots or like MEV bots label on Ethereum versus the builder side of label. And they saw that like a lot of the known MEV, like high frequency trading address, are basically only sending towards one builder, and it's like clearly shows the vertical integration of some searcher and builder. So yes, here is like a simple analysis, and here's a number for like private order flow percentage in this year Q1. So in January to March, we looked at like the settled transactions on chain by different builder and how many were seeing in mempool or not. And we see like a lot of the builders are already adopting private mempool order flow, and it's around like 3% to 5% for most competitive builders. And when we look at this data again, like in Q3, the number scale definitely jumped like by 3 times. Like most of the competitive builders on the right side, as labeled out, is around like 13% to 15%, compared to like 3 to 5%. It's like 3x, I would say. And then a lot of the other smaller builders are also having like 5% and more private order flow. And so here's another scatter plot. And so if we put these 2 dimensions together in the chart, we can see that people say, okay, more private order flow will be a king or make you like more competitive as a block builder. Is that true? And in this data, it shows pretty much is a trend like what people say. If you see the Beaver build, Titan build, rsync, they're all taking around like 15% of private order flow. Same as Flashbots, around 15%. Builder 69 also having 13%. An outlier there is Block Beater, and they have like a really high private order flow percentage, but like lower landed number of blocks. We're still studying further to understand why, but pretty much we can say that like, as the more private order flow you get, the higher number of blocks you're gonna land, like more competitive you will be. So yeah, a meme there. So yeah, it's all very interesting, how the order flow landscape and like private mempool adoption and how the game block builders are playing today. So further, I think there are some research that's being worked on is to be able to categorize different private order flow into like, say, higher value one, say it's a CeFi DeFi arbitrage, or it's like on-chain atomic arbitrage, or it's a lower value but just private order flow. And so to be able to model further, and so to see like how much, how important as a factor they are. Yeah, and also thanks to our teammates who published the mempool dumpster data set, which is aggregating 5 different sources of nodes. And we imported it into Dune Analytics, so anyone can query it now and for free, and so to analyze join all the data sets between mempool and also the applications. So yeah, that's my analysis today to share, and send your transaction to a private mempool and don't send it to a public mempool, and thank you. Any question? Oh, cool. I see a red clothes first.
Okay. 1-1. Oh, so when you select transactions for like a huge block, what is the motivation for the builder to create blocks with, let's say, fusion or cove swap or anything that is like protected against MEV? When you compare it to like Uniswap, because like from Uniswap you can get much more profit as a block builder, right? And so cove swap, why would you include it in a block?
I'm trying to understand the question. So you mean like for a block builder, what's the incentive for them to include a MEV blocker or like, like cove swap versus a Uniswap? Because assumingly Uniswap trade, they can potentially take some profits by doing background or whatever from Toronto sandwiching. I think that's a good question, and I think it really doesn't really decided by a block builder to include which transaction. It's really the user is deciding which front end they're using, And if like CowSwap has a flow that's like giving you gas fee, potentially higher gas fee, and also potentially they are sending the transaction towards MEV blocker, which is an order flow auction, where they actually give builders transfer, so to be included, then why not? So I think it's more of like, I don't think the builder has it's not like including either or kind of case. I think the block space today can definitely allow them to include both. It's more of like probably if they have bigger flow, say like CeFi, DeFi up, then that might be a question. But yeah. And there was a question here.
So at the moment, there's still quite a lot of market share for non-solvers, but do you see solvers sort of winning over the longer term, or how do you see it evolving from here?
That's a really good question, and I think a lot of people just like no-brainer say, like solver model is definitely giving a better price execution or like execution quality compared to DEX aggregator or AMM. I'm pretty convinced that it will be better than AMM execution, because like AMM is basically zero protection. Like you send your transaction, there's MEV bots giving you slippage by front-round sandwiching you. But I would say I'm not sure if like solver model is giving that much of a price improvement compared to DEX aggregator. I think there still needs to be study to be done for that. But another question for solver model is, by theory, it sounds all great for a user. Like it should be a better price execution by theory. Another problem for a solver model today is how sustainable it can be for solvers to operate. So like, for example, CowSwap solvers, they are basically getting rewards from Cow token, and then also 1inch fusion, and I'm not sure about Uniswap's incentive model, but if you look at the number of solver on a Doom Dash for 1inch fusion or CowSwap, you can see that there were a lot of new adopters coming in to be a solver, but then over time they died down because the rewards isn't just sustainable. Like a lot of people from solver team been complaining like it's too much work for too little incentive. So I think the economics for solver model needs to be still fixed or like improved. So yeah, that's what I understand. 1 minute, I think. If no more questions. Oh, there's one more.
Okay. What do you think? Are we moving to fully private mempool in 3 years, or it never gonna happen?
I couldn't hear you clearly, but maybe you asked if moving to fully private mempool would be a failure or not?
Are we moving towards this direction or not?
Okay. I think, yeah, so like the data shows the trend that like private mempool adoption is being higher and higher, and I think it will be still a trend in the future, and like the number will go higher than what we see today, like 13, 15%, because I'm seeing like movements of like, for example, Consensus, which is the incubator company for MetaMask, which has majority of the retail users, wallets adoption today, has acquired an order flow auction solution called SMG, and so they're basically considering private mempool and like order flow auction design and how they are tapping into the MEV space. So I think it's definitely going to go up with all those like big distribution power entity is taking consideration about private mempool. Yeah, but I don't know if it's going to be like 80% or any. So 5 seconds. Oh, actually 5 seconds over. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.